if you're old enough, this feels like Groundhog Day, doesn't it, really? Do you remember what was it, 1983, I think it was, when Bush went into Iraq? And I remember I was a student in London at the time, and it was, some said it was the first televised war. We kind of saw it on TV. Nothing like, today's war, where you're getting endless sort of social media accounts of planes falling out of the sky and schools being blown up and destruction and death, in a 24-hour feed. But, it was still TV, 1983. We still saw Baghdad light up on that glorious night. And I remember I was in my room in London and I ran into my best friend's room. We shared a flat. And I said, "Dave, they've gone in. They've gone in." And we turned on the TV and smoked a rollie. Yeah, heady days. So the surprise is, of course, that Trump really was elected on the basis that he wasn't going to get involved in all of these foreign wars. But here he is, the world's policeman once again. Of course, there's something very schizophrenic about the Trump MAGA government. So there's nothing unusual in that, and I'm not going to bore you with analysis of what's happening because I'm sure that you are sick of it. And of course, we don't get anywhere with the analysis either because it depends where you go, doesn't it, for your information. Either it is images of Iranians crying in the streets at the death of the great Ayatollah, or equally it is footage of the Iranians celebrating the fact of his death. So, no need in any analysis. But it is a bit like Groundhog Day, and I'm wondering whether or not this is a Groundhog Day, not just in our lifetimes, but maybe since the dawn of man. Maybe the idea of a peaceful utopia, a heaven on this beautiful earth, is a kind of, not a joke exactly, but certainly an illusion, that the whole purpose of government is crisis management, as the human animal leaps from crisis to crisis, born out of its drive for territory, its drive for food, its drive for power, its hunger within, and that we are just lumbered with this. But anyway, of course, if government is crisis management, you do wonder why governments cause the crisis that they then have to manage. But there you go. But I was thinking that if Trump has now decided that he's going to be the world's policeman and he's donned the hat, it'd be quite interesting to compare him to another famous policeman, Dixon of Dock Green. Now, I'm probably the only person on YouTube who remembers Dixon of Dock Green, but I think it was started in the late 50s and went through the 60s on BBC. And it was a drama about a local policeman, Dixon of Dock Green, and about his beat, his life in the locality. And, Dixon wasn't a sheriff. He was a British bobby, a local officer, a community figure. He was patient. He was restrained. He took responsibility and often felt guilty at his actions. He was very largely trusted by the community. And he felt that his job as not the world's policeman, but the local policeman was a kind of service to the community. And he was the sort of epitome of what we thought a policeman was. They were very different days, I know. But I compare him to Trump. Trump, this kind of megalomaniac, sort of shooting from the hip, his endless rhetoric about, go to your homes where it will be shock and awe, and the emphasis of force and peace through strength and all of that kind of thing. There's none of the soft-spoken, calm authority of Dixon or Doc Green. It's all confrontational. It's hate speech. And also, Dixon of Doc Green, he knew the locality. He knew where he was policing. He knew the people. He knew the streets. He knew, he knew the best way forward. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about the Middle East. He thinks really that Iranian people are, well, they're kind of nomadic camel riders. That's what he thinks. He doesn't realise that they are some of the most educated and cultured, intelligent and interesting people on the planet. They're kind of expendable really to him. He doesn't know anything about them, of course. And this isn't, I'm just not making this up. I mean, I was listening to Rory Stewart, and he was saying exactly the same thing, saying that Donald Trump would not be able to probably name one city in Iran. But it doesn't matter. That's not the point. So, Dixon of Dock Green, he had power as the local bobby, as the local policeman, but he didn't. He would occasionally, you would imagine he might wield it very occasionally with a stern word, but unlikely would he unleash a torrent of missiles on a school or on innocent people. He would probably avoid that kind of thing. Yeah, so the stability we get from Dixon, who was the archetypal policeman, and now Trump is the policeman of the world, Trump is the complete opposite, confrontational. Well, he's a madman. We kind of, I think most of us understand that now. I think even those who support him understand that he is, he's probably should have retired about 20 years ago. But anyway, never mind. He is the new world's policeman. He's back being the world's policeman. And that is all there is to it. Not much we can do about it. Whether or not he'll get away with it, I have no idea at all. So, yeah, we're hearing all the same things, aren't we? So there's a lot of propaganda out there. It reminds me again of the 2003 Iraqi attack on Iraq by Bush. That was the famous when there was weapons of mass destruction, and the British Prime Minister stood up and said, who was Tony Blair, and who often was praying together with George Bush, and then would suddenly stop praying with George Bush and would say, they're going to hit Cyprus within 45 minutes. And they sexed up the intelligence document saying that Britain was under was under imminent attack, or attack would be imminent on the. Of course, all of this was completely made up, and Cyprus again is featuring very heavily. A missile was pointed at Cyprus, so Starmer has given permission for the Cyprus bases to be used. Of course, the British Defence Secretary and Keir Starmer are utterly impotent in this, and they kind of admit it, because when asked for an opinion, both of them have said exactly the same thing, basically, which is, it's nothing to do with us, we did not do this. And then when pushed and said, well, do you agree with this kind of action? Even though, of course, it's against any international order. Of course, the international order doesn't exist anymore, and some people are fine with that. They just will back off that and say, well, look, we didn't get involved, we're not involved. Terribly tragic. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because the UK is no longer important in the world, and is making itself less important every day. But the thing is that whatever you hear over the next week, 2 weeks, is pretty much immaterial. Have you noticed how quick the news cycle is now? The Ayatollah was killed, and that was, 24 hours ago. They put someone else in place, an interim leader, and that's all kind of been forgotten about. We're much more interested in the burning hotel in Dubai. And so there was no great victory for Trump in killing the Ayatollah Khomeini in terms of some kind of great, wonderful legacy would come out of it. It's kind of already forgotten. Who cares? Whatever. Anyway, so and do you remember that moment when that the statue of Saddam Hussein was pulled down by the crowd, and it was at that moment that George Bush said something which I've forgotten, but it was something like it was something about, there was some kind of victory speech, you know. It was a wonderful day in history, and of course what happened was millions were to die in the aftermath. So don't worry about what's happening now, or in the next 2 weeks, or the next 3 weeks. Let's think about what's going to... Yeah, let's see what happens over the next 10 years. Okay? Don't worry too much about the fireworks. I know the fireworks are great, but, you know, it's going to get even more unpleasant. So, yeah, US has got about 750 overseas bases, and it likes to, I suppose, use them occasionally, but it might find that Iran is a slightly different enemy from Iraq. You might remember in Iraq, they were able to carpet bomb nearly the entire Iraqi army at one point as they came out of Kuwait, and destroyed about 100,000 vehicles in a period of 3 hours. Well, it's not quite going to be that easy this time, and what the long-term consequences will be, I have absolutely no idea. But I'm sure you've all read the analysis, and you can make your own minds up, obviously, about if you want to choose a side on this. I'm afraid I'm a bit old-fashioned. I kind of choose the side of humanity, and I think by and large, the idea of dropping explosives from the air onto innocent people is something that is something that should be avoided by and large. The whole idea of the regime change in history, that is never, or very rarely is that a success. Some people, of course, are saying that Trump is just doing this because he's very worried about these new allegations against him, which I'm not going to repeat, but, you know, they're sexual allegations that sort of stem from the Epstein files. But, I mean, only an absolute madman would set the Middle East on fire because he was worried about being exposed for a sex act. Only a madman would do that.